And so that's something that can be directly to them. Is there? I don't want to have to interpret it through somebody else. I know exactly what's being said. I believe that's the procedure that the court's review expects. Is there anything else that you're asking that I do in that regard at this time? Let's bring it up, Chris. Yes.
Since 2015, these defendants have been putting on a facade. But during this trial, they will be exposed to you as the liars, the abusers, and the murderers that they are. The dictionary defines facade as an outward appearance that is maintained to conceal an unpleasant reality. This is the Rosenbaum's home. It's a facade because on the outside, it appears to be a place of safety. It appeared to be the place where two young girls who had lived an unstable life from the time they were born would finally have a safe home to land in. But the reality, it was a home of terror, and a home of horror, and a home where Laila Daniels was murdered. These defendants are a facade. They appear to be nice, kind, and loving. That's how they presented themselves to everyone in 2015 when they wanted to get Millie Place and Laila Daniel. They appeared to be that protection that these girls would finally have. But the reality, they are liars, abusers, and murderers. They were not protectors. Joseph Rosenbaum was an abuser. You heard the judge read the indictment. Unknown manners, 49 charges. We don't know what she did to those babies, but we know she beat them. I'll rephrase that, Your Honor. The evidence will show that they are abusers, liars, and murderers. The evidence will show that Jennifer Rosenbaum beat Laila Daniels and she beat Millie Place unmercifully. We don't know if she kicked them, if she stumped them, or she punched them, but we know she did something to them to cause extreme damage. And Joseph Rosenbaum sat by and did nothing. Just let it happen. And that's why they are sitting here before you today. And the tears of facade. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these girls, they did not have the best start. Their mom, Tessa Daniels, she was addicted to drugs since she was a teenager. She struggled. Their life was unstable, unpredictable, and unreliable with her. She drugged them from place to place, home to home, and you'll hear sometimes she left them with strangers that she only knew for a matter of minutes. Their fathers, Jacob Place and Anthony Daniel, they were in and out of jail, not really a part of these girls' lives. So people believed from the moment that they came into this world, they were in harm's way, that they would not have that safety and the protection that they needed, that they deserved as young girls. So in May of 2015, when these, what the evidence would show as liars and abusers and murderers showed up, everybody had a sigh of relief because that facade was there. They were dressed well, they spoke well, they were educated and homeowners. Finally, these girls are going to be safe. Finally, they're going to have the protection that they need and they deserve. But that wasn't the reality at all. They were they were in more danger with these defendants than they were with anybody that they passed through the hands of over the course of their short lives. Now, on November the 17th, the facade came crumbling down. They were exposed. They were exposed to EMT, hospital staff, police officers, and defects workers for who they truly were. And that's why we're here today, because of those events that came to light on November the 17th. Now, the judge read you the indictment in this case, and he will tell you that the state has the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that we must prove each and every count of that indictment, each element of those charges, to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And as the state, we take that very seriously. We want to make sure that we meet our burden. So over the course of this trial, you will hear from everyone. Family members, family friends, doctors, anyone who cared for these children. So you can understand that the danger they were in were when they were with these defendants, no one else. Now, you'll hear from, like I said, a lot of people. And at times it may get confusing because it's a lot to keep up with. So I ask you guys to have notepads in front of you. I ask that you take notes, write down dates, write down events, because you're going to have to recall it. Although we have a court reporter, you won't get a transcript to go back there with you. So I ask that you be attentive throughout the entire trial. Even when it seems to be daunting, we need you to pay attention. These girls need you to pay attention. Now, it's funny to me that criminal trials usually start at the end of something. The end of an armed robbery, the end of a shoplifting, the end of a rape, in this case, unfortunately, at the end of Layla's life. But I think it's important for you to know the beginning, to know how we got here. You'll hear from Peggy Banks, who is the great-grandmother of Millie Place and Laila Daniel. She's probably the most stable person in these girls' lives. But unfortunately, due to her age and health conditions, she wasn't always able to get the girls and take them in and give them that safety and protection that they needed. She was there, but she could not have them where she was physically all the time. And then you have Regina Banks and Richard Clendenny, the girls' grandparents. And you'll hear for years they struggled with drugs, and they just were not people of safety for these girls. And I told you about Tessa Clendenny. This is a girl's mother. As I stated, Tessa was young, she struggled with drug addiction, and to be quite honest, she's still struggling. And you'll hear from her. She's going to come into court and she's going to testify. And she's lost a child and she's still dealing with drugs. But what she's going to tell you, you will be able to find based on the evidence that she is credible. That her girls, when they were with her, no harm came to them. Now, Millie Place is the oldest. She was born in 2011. Her father is Jacob Place. And Anthony Daniel, and when Tessa broke up with Jacob Place, her and Anthony Daniel began to date, and they had a child, Laila Daniel. Layla was born on July the 18th of 2013. Millie was born on October 4th, 2011. She likes to tell you can remember it by saying 10-4. You'll hear from Millie, and she will come in and she will talk to you about what she endured and what she can remember, because I want you to remember she was very young when this happened, ladies and gentlemen. But she's going to come in here and she's going to do the best that she can to explain to you what happened to her when she was in the hands of these defendants. Now, they went from hand to hand, over the course of literally a year. Probably for the first year of Millie's life, things seemed to be pretty stable. She was with Tessa and Jacob. They lived together, and they seemed to be doing fine. Tessa was working, Jacob was working. They were living in the house with Regina Banks. Now, there was an incident that I'm sure the defense will let you know about that I believe it was the beginning of 2013. It was New Year's Day. Millie got outside. She was probably a little bit over a year old, and she was walking down the street. Someone saw her, called the police, and defects came in. They came in. They didn't take Millie away. They said they didn't find her having any injuries, any issues. They told the parents you need to lock the doors, you need to put those secure locks. If anybody has small kids, how you put those locks on the doors to keep them from going out. Sometimes it keeps the adults from going out too. But they put those on and everything was fine. Then at some point in time, Tessa and Jacob Place, they parted ways. And she began to date Anthony. Shortly after Layla was born, almost 2 months later, Anthony Daniel was arrested. And Tessa fell apart. She relapsed. She just couldn't take it anymore, and she went missing. During that time, she was staying with her mother and Anthony's sister, Caitlin Daniel, who you'll hear from. And from about September of 2013 to July of 2014, Layla stayed with Regina and Caitlin. They moved to different apartments, but they kept Layla with them. They both were working. They made sure that they had a babysitter to take care of her while they were at work, and then they would come home and take care of her during that time. Millie, she wasn't with Caitlin and Regina. Tessa kept her with her. As a firstborn, she kind of clung on to Millie. So Millie would be with her sometimes. If she wasn't with Millie, she would have her with her great-grandmother, Peggy. And then in July of 2014, Regina and Caitlin lost their apartment. They had to move in with a friend, Cynthia Tate, who was someone that they worked with, and her daughter, Tiffany Shaw. And while they were living there, Tiffany Shaw began to take care of Layla. She also had a son that was around the same age as Layla, and she basically will tell you that she just kind of raised them like twins. They were just a few days apart. And they stayed there with her for almost a year. At some point in time, defects got involved and they made them as a safety plan for these girls. And they would come and check and make sure that they were okay. And you'll hear that everything was fine when they were living with Cynthia Tate and Tiffany Shaw. Sometime between July and September of 2014, Tessa got Millie and she brought her over to the Tate's house. And while at the Tate's house, Tiffany Shaw's dad and stepmom was there. Tessa knew that she had a probation warrant and that she was going to be going to jail. So she talked to the Chapmans and she said, hey, I need someone to take my baby. Can y'all please just take her and watch her for me until I get myself straightened out? The Chapmans were elated because they couldn't have kids. So this was an opportunity for them to have a beautiful little girl in their house that they can doll up and just really just give her all the love that they had in their hearts. And that's what they did. And she stayed with them for a few months. And you'll hear Peggy, Millie being her first great grand, had a special bond with her. And she would go and she would visit Millie. But the Chapmans lived up in Jelani, and that was a far drive for Peggy. And it just got to the point where she couldn't make that drive anymore. And she probably did something that wasn't the best choice. Jacob showed up one month, and she said, hey, let's go get Millie. They rode up to Delonda, they grabbed Millie, put her in a car, and drove off. As you can imagine, the Chapmans lost their mind. They're like, what is going on? This baby that we thought we were going to have is gone. They called the police. The police came out, and defects got involved. And because there was no legal paperwork or any information to really say, hey, the Chapmans could have them, they tried to reach out to Tessa, they got Tessa, and Tessa, said, well, if my great-grandmother wants her, let her go with my great-grandmother. At that time, defects said, well, the Tates are already a safety plan for Layla. Layla will go with the Tates as well. Millie will go with the Tates as well. So for a few months, Millie and Layla lived with Cynthia Tate and Tiffany Shaw. And you will see photographs of when these girls were with them. They were there just being loved on, being cared for. But at some point, Millie began to want to be with her great-grandmother because that's what she was used to. That was the stability, the constant that she had in her life. And so the Tates, they acquiesced and said, you know what, Peggy? You can take her. Millie wants to be with you. So probably right before Christmas, Millie goes to live with Peggy. But Layla stays with the Tates. And I tell you all of this, ladies and gentlemen, because I want you to understand how these girls were cared for, how they were loved on throughout this whole time. And they remained there until about April of 2015. And the Tates just got a little tired because defects was coming in. They wanted to check Lucas, who was Tiffany Shaw's son, and she said, enough is enough. I just can't do this anymore. Defects, you have to figure out where these kids, where Layla can go because I can't take care of her anymore. Defects stepped in, and because they wanted the girls together, they began to reach out to different family members. Who will take these two sisters together? Because that's all really they had, were each other. So defects wanted to keep them together. They only had one family member that was willing to take in both the girls, and that was Elaine Place. And you'll hear, she only kept them for 2 days, unfortunately. And she just said, I can't do this anymore. And at that point, defects said, you know what, we're stepping in, and we're going to put them in foster care. And they ended up being with Miss Larita Brown in April of 2015. And they were only there for a short period. I told you these babies just jumped around, just no stability. And with Miss Larita Brown, they were good. They were fine. You'll see pictures, you'll see videos of how they were just happy, loving little girls, just enjoying life despite the hand they had been dealt. But then in June of 2015, Miss Larita had an incident at her house that didn't involve the girls, and defect said, we got to move them out. Yet another move for the girls. Then they ended up going to the Laylas. And you'll hear from Ms. Lambert, she's been a foster parent for years. And she's one of those good, dedicated foster parents. She takes notes. She makes sure that the caseworker is doing their job. And if these babies come back looking some kind of way, she is going to notate it and tell somebody. And you're going to hear about the notes that she made once these defendants stepped into the picture. Because like I told you, in May of 2015, the defendant, the evidence would show, being on Facebook, found Tessa Clendon. Saw pictures of her girls. And I'm sure the defense is going to tell you, because they got to live up to that facade and the appearance, that Ms. Rosenbaum was a third-year law student at Emory Law School. She was interning at the DA's office. She was running for county commissioner. Facade. But they got her. And she said, oh, I'm in court. I saw your girls. I want to help you out. My prayers are with you. I'm willing to take them in. And so defects, believing what they saw on the outside, began to allow the girls to visit with the Rosenbaums. And eventually, at some point in July, they were placed there with them permanently, July 24th of 2015. And they remained there with the Rosenbaums until November 17th of 2015, when Layla was killed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I think is kind of interesting, is a telltale sign of who these defendants really are, is that one of the first visits that they had with Layla, she ended up in a hospital room. In her last day, her last breath, her last moment on life with them, ended up in a hospital room. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I believe throughout this trial, there are going to be a lot of lies that you are going to hear. Because the defendant, they spend a web of lies from beginning to end. That's what the evidence is going to show. I'm not even going to, because the judge is going to tell you, you don't believe what I say. Believe what comes from that witness stand and the evidence that is presented throughout this trial. And that evidence is going to show they are liars. Every moment they got, they lied. From the moment that they began to seek out these girls, because they saw them out. The history, how they got the girls. You'll hear, and I'm going to back up just a little bit and give you a little bit of a preview. Tessa and Jen at some point were in foster care together when they were young. And that's how they knew one another. And Jennifer went on Facebook looking up all her foster siblings or people she'd been in foster care for some reason unknown to the state. And that's how she found Tessa and knew that Millie and Layla were her kids. She began to tell folks that, oh, we were really close friends, we were good friends, and that's why the defect said, okay, this is a good person. This can be a fictive kin placement. Versus being a foster care, these kids can be with somebody that is kind of close to their family. But that's not true, ladies and gentlemen. You'll hear that at some point, Tessa and Jennifer did not have a good relationship. There's some backstory about a guy that they didn't like each other over. So it wasn't this, oh, this is my foster sister, and I really just want to help her out. It was just a lie. And you'll hear when she met folks and she talked about how she had the girls and why she got the girls. Some people she would tell, oh, Tessa reached out to me and asked me to get the girls. Oh, DFAX reached out to me and asked me to take the girls. All lies. And then when folks would ask her, or not even ask why the girls were in foster care, oh, they were being physically abused by their parents. Telling outrageous stories of what happened to the girls when they were in the care of Tessa. All lies. You'll hear that she lied about the girls going to daycare. I don't know why. It's just, some people just lie to lie. But the evidence will show these girls were never in daycare. They were never in school. She lied about the girls going to counseling. When they were with them, there wasn't any counseling going on. But that's what she's telling people. So I guess the girls kind of close to her because that's what she would use to cancel visitation with family members. Because Peggy still wanted to see the girls. And she would say, oh, the girls have counseling. They can't see you today. I believe the evidence will show us because they were bruised up and she didn't want anybody to see them. So she told that lie of counseling. Doctors, she would lie to folks and say, oh, the girls were sick, I had to take them to the doctor's office. The evidence will show there were no doctor visits on those dates that she was claiming there were doctor visits. There were no hospital visits, there were no ER visits, except for when she was harming the girls, and we're going to talk about that. The injuries. You will see over the course of this trial, from the time these girls get with them, they are having injuries. And I know kids are small, they fall, they bump their head, and they do all kinds of things. But consistently, a bump on the head, a burn on the hand, a bump on the leg, a bruise on the eye, all under their watch. So much so that Ms. Lambert said, hey, to DFAX, not still believing that facade. I just don't think they're ready to handle kids. It looks like they're not supervising them right. Not that they're abusing them, but I think they just need to pay a little bit closer attention to these kids. Jennifer would say, oh, they fell in the playground. Oh, they got hurt at daycare that they didn't attend. Oh, they fell down the stairs or they fell off the bed. No doctor's visits for that. The story that she tells about falling down the stairs inconsistent with the injuries that other medical professionals saw. Just a web of lies. And then you heard about broken bones. We asked you all about broken bones. On October the 19th, she showed up to the hospital again with Layla. And this time Layla has a broken leg. And she tells a gamut of lies. First, it starts out with, she fell in a hole at Nana's house, and that's Peggy Banks. You'll hear that Peggy Banks had not seen Layla and she had not been to her house. And in fact, there are no holes in the backyard at Ms. Banks' house. Just a lie. Then she coupled it with, oh, she fell at gymnastics. First, let's start with, she was never even enrolled in gymnastics. A lie. Second, let's start with, I don't know if any of you have kids that have gone to gymnastics class. I think a couple of you on the jury said y'all had some experience with that. She was too. So she's in that toddler set on stage. She's on the little, I think it's like the ice slide, where there's padding everywhere, no high bars, and they are supporting them on every step that they take. Not possible that she broke her leg at gymnastics. But you got a child with a broken leg and you got to explain how it happened. And what does she resort to? What she always resorts to, a lie. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the most egregious lie of all came on November the 17th of 2015. At 5:42 p.m., a call came in to 911. Oh, I have a child. She's choking on chicken. You'll hear the EMTs rush there. When they got there, first of all, on the phone, you'll hear her giving CPR, asking about CPR. And then you'll hear her say, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to hurt her. We'll talk about that. But the EMT arrived, thinking we have a child that is choking. We got all our equipment ready. We're ready to try to help this child get whatever's lodged in her throat, because that's what choking means. Something is obstructing your airway. There is something in there that cannot allow you to breathe. When the EMT gets there, they begin to check. They check her breathing, find that she's not breathing. But also they find there is no obstruction. The EMT will tell you, I did what I'm supposed to do. I put her over, I gave her a couple of black gloves, nothing came out. But when I turned that baby over, what I saw told me, this is not about choking. This is something way different. And you will see the photographs, ladies and gentlemen. It is horrific. But she continued with her lie. She was choking on chicken. The EMT will tell you, we put that baby in there, we had to intubate her. We're giving her compressions. She does not have a pulse. And when we intubated her, we're thinking it's going to be difficult because there's something in her airway. Easy to go in, not a problem, because you know why? Another lie. There was no chicken, there was no choking. What the evidence will show is that there was a severe, brutal beating that day. And we're going to be clear, it wasn't the first time. This one was just the worst one. They get Layla into the ambulance and take her to the hospital. And because it's a baby, they'll tell you she didn't have any breath. She didn't have any pulse. But nobody wants a baby to be dead on their watch. So they worked and they worked and they worked. When they got her to the hospital staff worked and worked and worked. But it was too late. She was gone. So everybody, as you have to do when it's a child that is dead, let's stop, let's take a breath, and let's look. And when they looked, what they saw shocked their conscience. Layla was bruised from head to toe. The doctors will tell you that she had abrasions to her ears. And you'll hear from the expert who will tell you that is a telltale sign of physical abuse. And they'll go through, because kids, that's a protected area. So it's hard to get a bruise there unless somebody caused it, by pinching, slapping you, or doing something that causes blunt force trauma. She had bruising to her neck. Once again, a protected area. That's what your head is for. Little kids, they got big heads, so their necks are real protected. But she had bruising all along her neck. Bruising on her chest area. Bruising on her arms. And you'll see that there's this mark on her stomach that nobody can explain what it is or where it came from. But what you will hear over the course of the testimony, it wasn't there before she got there. Abdominal bruising. And ladies and gentlemen, they talk about, oh, bad CPR, could have been the CPR. It's bruising down here. You ain't doing CPR down here. CPR is up here. Bruising in her groin. I don't know how other way to get there except for abuse. Maybe just a couple of stumps. Abrasion all on the inside of her thighs, on the back of her thighs. Abrasions to her hands, injuries to her palms. That the doctors will tell you what can be consistent with a pap, some blunt force trauma. Bruising on her shins and bruising on her feet. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to sit here and tell you that every bruise on that baby was a part of abuse by them, because she was a kid. But the most egregious ones in those areas where doctors will tell you, nah, kids ain't getting no bruises falling on the playground or falling down the stairs, not there. Those are the ones we're talking about. Bruises all in her head. And not just the back. You know, a kid may fall, hit the front of their head, they may fall, hit the back of their head. The top of their head. What she was doing, diving off the stairs onto the top of her head? I doubt it. Maybe she was getting bust on the top of her head. Bruises to her butt. And they'll tell you, this is the fleshy part. Hard to bruise unless it's some real serious force coming behind it. With a hand, with a belt, with some object. As I said, bruising to the back of her thighs. And the most extensive bruising on her back. From her neck down to her butt. I'm not done, ladies and gentlemen. That's not all what she did to this baby. And when you look at those outer bruises, because that's what we just talked about. I'm talking to you about those inner bruises. Those outer bruises, they're not all new. They're in different stages of healing. So like I told you, the evidence will be clear. This wasn't the first beating that Layla had suffered. So we're going to talk about those internal injuries. Her tibia, which we talked about, was broken and healing. She got it treated. Because it probably hurt so bad the baby couldn't walk. At some point, you got to do something. So she did get that set. How she broke it, I don't know, but I can tell you it wasn't at gymnastics. Her arm was broken. It was broken in such a way, when the ER staff took a step back, they said, what's wrong with her arm? It's bowed out. It doesn't look right. So they x-rayed and said, this arm has been broken. And it has not been treated, and it's healing. The healing of it is not proper. It's so improper that you can see the outward bend of it from outside of her skin. Never been treated. And I'm going to tell you, I think some of y'all had some broken bones. And if you got a broken bone, the evidence will show that it's going to hurt. And you're going to know that a 2-year-old has a broken bone. So if you sit in the house and she's holding her arm and you don't do anything, you're just as culpable as the person that broke it. Posterior rib fractures. And we talked about CPR, and I know y'all probably got tired about it. But that's what they're going to tell. Oh, she broke the rib from CPR, but I want you to pay attention. I didn't go to medical school, wasn't smart enough. So posterior, I'm like, what does that mean? Her back. The back rib. Not the front where people expect if you're pressing down, you might break a rib. But what's interesting about that rib fracture that she had, it was old. It was healing. It wasn't even something that happened that day. It was from another beating that she had given a couple of weeks ago. Injuries, I told you, all in her head, and unfortunately you will have to look at the autopsy pictures, and they're horrific. But what's interesting about our bodies is even the things you can't see from the outside, when you open it up, the bruises in her head, not just one, not just two, but multiple, in places that you wouldn't expect from just a normal 2-year-old falling down from play. And then you'll see that in some of the autopsy photos, the injuries from the outside that you couldn't see. But the ones that caused her death, ladies and gentlemen, a lacerated liver. That means that she had so much pressure, so much force, so much blunt trauma to her abdomen that it pushed all the way back to her spine. And with such force, it caused her liver to slice. And it's not a little slice, it's a big slice. So that means that was a big force. Not something you would get from CPR. A laceration, hemorrhaging, and internal bleeding. Basically what that means is she was bruised all in the inside. Her organs were bruised and broken and bleeding. And the worst injury of all, what ultimately caused her death, was her pancreas was transected. Your pancreas comes in one part. When they opened Layla up in that autopsy, it was in 2. That's just how hard she had been hit by this defendant. Or stalked, or kneed, but with such force that her little body could not take it, and her organs began to split and tear and rip. And then she bled to death. And they may say it may have looked like choking, but what she was doing was suffocating and dying due to the internal bleeding that had been caused by this defendant. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to be clear, and I want you to pay attention when they're talking the medical talk, that we're not just talking about internal bruising from November the 17th. She got old, healing internal injuries in her abdomen. So when they try to tell you CPR from that day, a lie. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's Layla. So the hospital staff is thinking, if this baby looked like this, what's going on with that other baby? So they pull Millie in, who is sitting at the side of this defendant, because everybody's believing that facade. Everybody's believing that, oh, they are just this big, happy family. All wrong with them. These babies, oh my God, she's lost a child. We need to gather around her. A facade.
Excuse me, that was my poster if you just threw over.
Excuse me. Take it up.
A facade, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they want to show you, this picture-perfect family. But that's not what it was. When they pulled Millie in and they checked her, bruises, not as severe as Layla, but enough to let you know that she was also being abused. She has what they call a petechiae on the side of her ear. And the doctors will tell you it goes from her ear down the side of her face onto her neck, consistent with blunt force trauma, like a slap. Not from just regular child's play. TPI on the other side of her neck. So I want to be clear, on this side and on that side. So they come and, oh, she fell down. Did she fall down and bounce on one side and bounce to the other? The evidence is going to show that's not what happened. Redness to her right cheek, large bruises on the inside of her arm, like a big bruise on her arm, near her elbow. Small little bruises all over her body that could be consistent with childhood play, but then the worst, all along the side of her hip, wrapping around her back and down to her buttocks. Bruises, different looking bruises, different stages of healing. And then they said, well, this one child, she had broken bones that hadn't been tended to. Let's do an x-ray and see about Millie. And what do they find? She has a healing fracture to her elbow. Not from gymnastics, not from any playground, but from abuse. Now, during jury selection, as I said, the defense talked to you a lot about CPR. I don't know what Ms. Moe is going to tell you. She actually doesn't have to tell you anything because the state has the burden. But I think they're going to talk to you about she was choking. And I told you how that is inconsistent with the evidence that you'll hear. Accidental CPR, doing it wrong, bruises that are old and healing. Bruises down here, bruises all on her back, bruises on her head. That's not from bad CPR, that's from abuse. Not, oh, they're bumps and bruises. No, they're not. Some of them are, but most of them are from abuse. It's a facade, ladies and gentlemen. And it's time for them to be exposed to you. And that's what the state intends to do during this trial, to bring you evidence to show you the truth, because that's what we're all here seeking, the truth. And I can tell you it's not going to come from that table. What you have to do as you look at the evidence, as you process it as it comes in, is look at it in totality, the totality of the circumstances. Not just one thing, but all of it. And when you look at all of those things, you'll see that there's no evidence of any food in her throat, so there's no choking. You'll hear that the medical doctors will talk about a transected pancreas, a lacerated liver. I think she had bruising to her intestines. Old abdominal injuries is not consistent with bad CPR. And I don't know if they've even seen a case where you've had all of those injuries from bad CPR. It's a lack of cases because it just doesn't happen, because that is not what the evidence is going to show that happened in this case. And I told you, extensive and old and new bruises. That's not from a one-time incident. That's from weeks of abuse. The evidence is going to show when these babies were with them, not one day of peace. Oh, they got nice, pretty pictures. They dress them up and they put bows in their head. And when they get them home, they beat and brutalize and terrorize them. And on November the 17th, they murdered Laila Daniels. Healing fractures. And then if this is bad CPR, one-time incident, why do you, this is what's important about the evidence. There is a second child who wasn't choking on chicken, who has broken bones and bruises all over her body. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this is a facade. And they will be exposed during this trial. The unpleasant reality, and unfortunately you are the ones who will have to make that unpleasant reality known to everyone in this courtroom, is that they are guilty of each and every count of that indictment. And at the end of this trial, I will ask that you find them as such. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Moe.
See, this didn't belong to the state. This was not an exhibit of theirs. It's an exhibit of ours that they purloined, that they stole right beneath our eyes and used in their case. And that is symbolic for the way they are handling this entire case. This case is about a brief period of time, 3.5 months. 3.5 months between July and November of 2015. And be sure you keep that in mind. 3.5 months. When Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum volunteered to become foster parents for 2 little girls who had been taken away from their parents because of meth usage. You will hear that DFACS does not terminate parental rights for nothing. These children were taken away from their parents. Jennifer, herself a foster child, when she was growing up, had known Tessa Clendenny. And what the state does not tell you, and what is important for you to know, is what the state chose not to tell you. What the state chose not to tell you is that Tessa Clendenny was more than delighted to have them, the Rosenbaums, taking care of their children. Not only were they delighted at the beginning, they were delighted in the middle, they were delighted up until the end. You will hear Peggy gave statements, Kim Smith, Peggy's sister, gave statements to the police. This cannot be abuse. This cannot be anything the Rosenbaums did. You will hear that defects workers will tell you that Jennifer had those children clinging to her. They loved on her and Joe. Both girls loved on her and Joe. You do not love abusers. You do not cuddle up with abusers. You will hear evidence that Jennifer took them wherever she went. So this notion that you have heard that she wasn't taking them out in public, you will hear evidence and you will see proof beyond a reasonable doubt that she did take them out in public. In fact, there are pictures for almost every day that these children were in custody of Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum. You will hear that she loved them, that she dressed them, she sewed for them, she made sure they were taken care of, she made them healthy foods, made sure they ate healthy foods, and outfitted their bedroom with all the toys a child could want, plus a TV, plus a tablet, so that the children could learn educational things on their own iPad and play educational games to learn new words and numbers. You do not do this. The evidence will show you do not do this when you are abusing children. During this time, Jennifer was a third-year law student at Emory Law School. Joseph was a corrections officer. They traded off responsibility for the care of the girls, but there were times when the girls were under the care of Jennifer Rosenbaum and Joseph had to work. He was working 2 jobs, not 1, but 2. He was also working security. So he was gone most of the time. When he was working a job and Jennifer had school, what did she do? Well, she let the children stay with babysitters at times, family members, people that she trusted. She also took the children with her, took the children to law school. And you will see pictures of that. You will see pictures of the children sitting in law school and behaving themselves, coloring. You will see all that, and that's evidence that comes to you directly from something concrete. It's not something that is yelled at you at the top of one's voice. It is merely and completely a true artifact of the time period that you are being asked to sit in judgment for. Lots of times, Joseph was not there. Joseph suffers from cystic fibrosis and diabetes. He frequently had to go to the doctor, had to go to hospital visits, and so he was not there on those occasions. He was frequently, on those occasions, Jennifer would pack them up and take the girls with her, wherever she went. Was it to class, to commission meetings? Because yes, as Ms. Young told you, she was running for Henry County Commissioner. So she took them to commission meetings. She took them with her wherever she went. The Rosenbaums loved the girls, and the girls loved the Rosenbaums. You will hear from defects workers that the girls were comfortable in the home and that they loved on Joe and Jennifer. You will hear evidence that the children participated in extracurricular activities and went to church daycare. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard wild accusations against the Rosenbaums, wild accusations against the defense. And I ask you just to hold the state to its burden and to their lies and to their misstatements to you. Because as you will see, the children did go to daycare. You will also see that the state is misinformed. They went to daycare, they went to church, they were with babysitters, they were with Rosenbaums, they were with other people. Millie in particular enjoyed gymnastics, and you're going to hear a lot about gymnastics. You're going to see pictures taken from that time, not recent pictures all doctored up, as the state would have you see. You will see pictures from that time of what the gym looked at that time. You will hear evidence that Layla had taken a class with her mom, with Jennifer. She took a pre-class to see if she would be really interested in doing that. And then after that, she would accompany her big sister to class. Jennifer would stay and watch them, and Layla would be there as well. They also had regular doctor's visits at this time, and you will hear that there is absolutely no evidence of abuse at that time, or at any time during the 3.5 months that these children were with the Rosenbaums. You will hear about the fractured leg, and this occurred over some time. It was not due to gymnastics, it was due to a combination of things. Millie told Jennifer that Layla fell at her Nana's house in a hole. And Layla, in fact, was favoring her leg, and Jennifer noticed that. But it seemed to be getting better. There was a visit to gymnastics, and the girls were playing on the bars. The equipment was out there, and people, unlike what you might expect, parents were allowed the run of the place, and they were able to play on the equipment unsupervised. Layla was playing on the bars with her mother. She slipped off the bar and fell on the mat. No one thought anything of it. No one filed a report. No one thought there was any problem. Later, when the child was unable to put any weight on the foot, they went to the doctor. And what ensued was not claims of child abuse, but putting the child in a soft cast, directing the child be placed in a hard cast, and that was all done. Like most younger folks today, Jennifer and Joseph took pictures of everything. They took pictures constantly. You will see those pictures. There are over 2,000 pictures that were taken of these girls. That is not what an abuser does. They documented their lives with Layla and Millie by photographing them and trying to build memories of their time together, a time they thoroughly enjoyed. Then tragedy struck, and you're going to hear Miss Lambert talk about a bruise here, a bruise there. You will also see and hear defects workers tell you unequivocally they saw those bruises too, and they were in fact healing. They were not fresh bruises that were done by the Rosenbaums as they visited with these girls. And you heard Miss Young tell you that this child started her life with the Rosenbaums in a hospital. Well, let's talk about the truth instead of manufacturing the truth here. Let's talk about the truth. What happened the first time they had her, they went to a party, to a barbecue, employees' barbecue for Spalding County. The child ate, the child seemed fine, and then the child started throwing up. She returned the child and said the child is throwing up. The child was taken to the emergency room and in fact had a viral infection. Now, to blame a viral infection on the Rosenbaums is a little much. And you will hear that this viral infection was throughout the household in which the child was living at the time. Tragedy struck on November 17th, and their lives would be changed forever by that. While eating dinner, Layla began to choke on a piece of chicken tender. Not chicken bone, as has been reported by the media, not a piece of bone, but a chicken tender. Jennifer was the only one home at the time, and how do we know this? Because Joseph was at Spalding County Correctional Institute where he worked. She reacted instinctively to help Layla, and what the state keeps talking about is CPR, CPR, CPR. What they don't mention, and I did not hear said once in the opening statement, was about Heimlich maneuver. And you will hear that there is literature, in the medical literature, about the Heimlich maneuver and how, if misapplied, not done properly, it can cause the rupturing of pancreas. That is documented. The doctors will talk to you about it. You will hear about this. Not from the state, but you will hear about it from the defense. The defense is going to bring to you, even though we have no burden to do so, don't have to do a thing, we are going to be calling a number of witnesses. we are going to be calling the former medical director of the GBI. And he is going to help you go through the medical evidence and see it for what it really is. And I ask you to wait to make your decision until such time as you've heard from everybody. It's very easy to do what the state and the media have done in this case, which is just sensationalize it to the hilt and not care about the due process rights, not care about the fact that what has to be done is it has to be tried in a court of law. If you heard the state's opening argument, the immediate question is, why in the world are these people here? Why are they pleading, signed their name, and said not guilty? Everyone knows if you plead guilty, you get a better deal. Why are they saying they're not guilty? They're saying they're not guilty because they're not guilty, they're innocent. She reacted instinctively to Layla by attempting the Heimlich maneuver. And she did that over and over again. And you will hear that that involved the back and the chest and the stomach. And you will hear that Jennifer was not trained in either CPR or Heimlich maneuver. What she did was what she saw on TV. And unfortunately, what that meant was the child was subjected to adult CPR and adult Heimlich maneuver. You will hear from the doctors that there is, and from the EMTs, that there is a reason why you do not do adult CPR and adult Heimlich maneuver on a child. You do not use your two hands to do compressions like you see done for adults. You do not pound on the back like you see done for adults. What you do is you use two fingers and you press gently back and forth. That is not what happened to Layla, unfortunately, that night. And that haunts Jennifer and will live with her forever. She did CPR, she did the Heimlich maneuver over and over again. She used a knife to hold down the tongue while she swept, trying to get the food out. You will hear that the child threw up. In fact, there was chicken in the sink. Jennifer had the child up against the sink, and the child ejected the chicken. So that explains why they didn't find anything in the throat. You will hear Jennifer's 911 call. You will hear how she's trying to take direction. By the time Layla, the paramedics had arrived, Layla was still alive, but just barely. She died shortly thereafter, on her way or at the hospital. You will hear that the EMTs and the police left Millie with Jennifer. Millie and Jennifer came to the hospital together. You will hear from Samantha White, who is the caseworker assigned to Jennifer and Joe's foster parenting of these children, tell you that she could hear Jennifer's wailing from the minute Jennifer got there. She was in the hospital and Jennifer was in the parking lot. And yes, you can be sarcastic and try and malign Jennifer and Joseph. You will hear people say, well, she didn't cry when I saw her. But you will hear that she cried mightily when she got to the hospital. She cried mightily when she could, when she was grieving, and we don't all grieve the same way. She came to the hospital, and events were about to take a turn that neither Jennifer nor Joseph could have anticipated. What was a horrible accident was going to be turned into a vendetta against these two folks. A vendetta that has continued to this very day, to this very minute, when Miss Young got up here and continued that vendetta. Someone has to be blamed. A child is dead. Someone has to pay. And what they're doing is mixing bad medicine together with sensationalism and blaming the first easy target instead of looking for the truth of the matter and seeing what really happened and seeing it for the accident it was. During the course of this trial, you're going to hear a lot of evidence about Jennifer and Joseph, mainly about Jennifer. You will hear that Jennifer, a young lawyer in training, could be brash. She spoke her mind. She enjoyed getting involved in politics. She was running for county commissioner. She was an up-and-comer in the legal community. You will hear that at times she could be critical and outspoken against politicians, and that eventually she sought to run for office against an incumbent who was very much liked. She sought to run against him, and that did not please the powers that be. You will hear that Jennifer did not hide her views and didn't hesitate to speak her mind. She made enemies in Henry County government. She criticized her opponent. She criticized the police chief of Henry County and referred to some officials as corrupt. This is not how you make friends, but Jennifer is young, and she saw herself speaking truth to power, of trying to change what she perceived to be a culture of corruption in local government. As a result, when this accident occurred, there was no shortage of folks to relish her comeuppance. Her political opponents set out to make sure she was painted in the worst light possible. This fervor took on a life of its own, and as the evidence will show, the police, 3 DA's offices, and the press all rushed to judgment and labeled the death a murder instead of seeing it for the terrible accident that it was. An accident gets a brief mention in the paper, but if you can talk about a killing, as Ms. Young put it, a murder, and about liars, that becomes grist for the media to sensationalize the story, boost their ratings, and they're here doing exactly that today, and we'll be here for the next week, 3 weeks that we will be here. In the end, that destroyed the lives of Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum, who were only trying to improve their community and make the lives of these 2 children better. You heard the indictment, 49 counts. How many counts does it take to say murder, aggravated assault? Do you need 49 different times to assert it? That is more vendetta against Joseph and Jennifer. There are 49 counts. There must be something to it. And that's the deceptive part on the part of the state. They are wanting you to decide based on emotion and alarm. The indictment of Jennifer and Joseph turned the public against them before the first piece of evidence was examined. You will see how this rush to judgment poisoned witnesses. You will see how the community was led to believe, for example, that Layla had been starved. That was a story that went through the press at one point. You will see that that was a notion made popular by Detective Thompson, the leading detective in the case. He came up with this idea all on his own, without a scrap of medical evidence, based on his seeing Layla once at the hospital and decided she had been starved. He took out warrants saying she'd been starved, and that was communicated in some way to the media and then to the general public. That mistake informed his conversations with witnesses and family members, and as a result, you will hear that Millie, after she was left in the care of her biological mother and her great-grandmother, Millie was said to have exclaimed to one of the foster mothers, "They don't put food in our bellies." Or on another occasion, that Jennifer fed Millie but not Layla. The truth, however, is not what Detective Robinson stated and took out from his warrants. The truth is that according to the state's own doctors and according to the medical examiner that the state used, both girls were well nourished. That means they were well fed. But that is not sensational. And that is not reported. Another notion put forth by the police was the idea that because Layla's anus was dilated, she had been sexually abused. That ran around town. You will hear that this too was a total fabrication, either based on ignorance or an intent to malign Jennifer and Joseph. The truth of the matter, you will hear, is that there was no abuse, sexual or otherwise, and that the dilation of the anus is a normal occurrence when a child dies. It is a normal biological function of the body shutting down. But before they came to this conclusion, the state had sought warrants for DNA and had released this information to the wider public, prejudicing the community against Jennifer and Joseph by passing along information that was manifestly untrue. You are going to hear accusations that when the girls were with the Rosenbaums, they showed up with bruises. And you will see the pictures of these bruises. And you will hear about, basically, you're going to hear about the type of bruises that children get into, especially children who are rough and tumble. And you will hear that these girls played, and they played hard. The bruise, the scratch to the knee, the knock under the eye, a bruise on the wrist. Those bruises that you will hear Ms. Lambert talk about were bruises that occurred before the Rosenbaums came on the watch. You will hear that those bruises were healing, and old. You will hear that DFACS was made aware of them, and that they made a conscious decision that these were healing and old, and even if they were Rosenbaum's watch, they were the regular rough and tumble type bruises that kids get. Then you will hear that the child had these other bruises, the bruises that were documented and talked about by the state. Her back was covered in a bruise. And what you're going to hear, again, misstatements that you're going to hear, is old injuries and new injuries. You're going to hear that the bruises, according to the state, were in stages of healing. And you will also hear, contrary to what the state says, and the police told Samantha White, bruises cannot be dated. It used to be thought that bruises progressed according to a color chart, and that you could tell the date of a bruise from its color. That is no longer valid science. And you will hear that from Dr. Sperry, and I imagine you will hear that from Dr. Darasoff, who's the medical examiner in this case. However, that story was perpetuated, and it too reached the ears of the witnesses, the family. The conclusion was exactly what Ms. Young said here today. Oh, she's been beating her every day of her life. The truth of the matter is that those bruises were acquired on November 17th, when Jennifer tried to save this child's life. It is outrageous to suggest otherwise. You will hear she had that extensive bruising on November 17th. Again, what you will not hear is as important. She did not have that bruising on November 16th. She did not have that bruising on November 15th. She did not have that bruising on November 14th. And the reason was it all happened on November 17th. And the reason for that is that it was bruising was caused essentially by Jennifer's efforts to save her while performing the Heimlich maneuver, pressing hard on her chest while trying to dislodge the chicken, blocking her throat, which she eventually did dislodge. Jennifer bent Layla over a sink to allow her to vomit and to try and force the chicken out. Unfortunately, she was just doing what she had seen done on TV. The result is that without intending to do so, Jennifer exerted pressure that went right through Layla's torso, lacerating her liver and tearing the pancreas in the process. But you will also hear that the Heimlich maneuver is known to do that, if not applied correctly. At some point, we're going to hear about the word intent, whether there was an intent to kill, an intent to harm. There will be no evidence of an intent to kill or to harm. It'll be up to you to decide whether Jennifer intended to kill Layla. You will hear her actions, you will hear her voice, you will hear her speak. As we believe the evidence will show, she accidentally caused the death in her haste and panic to revive and save her. And you will hear Dr. Sperry say, that Jennifer and the children were very close. You hear that they hung on her and that she was very proud and happy to be taken care of her. There will be evidence that Millie was questioned over and over and over again. You will also hear about forensic interviewing. Forensic interviewing, when it comes to children, is the means by which you are supposed to interview children. You're not supposed to ask them questions. You're not supposed to let their mother ask them questions. You take them to a forensic interviewer, and that forensic interviewer is trained and asks non-leading questions, non-conclusory questions, and gets, hopefully, the truth as a result of that. You will hear about various 2 or 3 forensic interviews that this child had, and at no point did she give a statement saying that Jennifer or Joseph did anything, knew anything, said anything, nothing. She laughed when it was suggested that she might have been abused. She laughed when they talked about, were you physically punished? You will hear that each time she told the interviewer, the caseworker, and medical professional that she did not hear or see anything, and no one ever hurt her or her sister, except for Layla's father, Anthony Daniel, who touched her private parts. She was asked about bruises on her body, and those bruises were not patterned bruises, they were not belt marks, electric cord marks, but bruises you get from being active, rough and tumble 4-year-olds, and she said she got those from falling down while playing and while doing gymnastics. But that was not what they wanted to hear. So what did they do? They sent the child to therapist. She didn't say anything. Sent her to another therapist. Meanwhile, she's living with her mother and her grandmother, great-grandmother, and then all of a sudden, the child started repeating things that she had heard. You will hear in this courtroom, the latest revision, you will hear that all through the time that she was asked, there were different stories. You will hear that the parents, she's now adopted, she and her 2 other sisters, Tessa had 2 children during the time these events were unfolding. Those 2 children and Millie are now placed, they're now adopted by Amanda Harrell. Millie is Millie Harrell at this point. You will hear what is the latest revision of history. She has grown, as she has grown older, her memory of being 4 years old has gotten clearer instead of fuzzier. You will hear that her adoptive mother was concerned that she was making stuff up. You will hear that her mother and her great-grandmother went to the doctor to try and find out why she lies so much. So keep that in mind when you listen to Millie and to what she has to say today. that she has been subjected to 3 forensic interviews, countless amounts of questioning and talk by her mother and great-grandmother. You will also hear that the therapists were concerned because she had been privy to inappropriate conversations by her mother and great-grandmother. You're not going to hear much about Joseph, because Joseph wasn't at home when Layla choked on the chicken. He was working the 2 jobs. He was not able to spend as much time with the girls as Jennifer did. He stayed with them when his wife had an exam, when his wife had to go to school, and when he was available. But often, the girls were asleep, playing with each other, or on the tablet when he was home from work. There will be no evidence that this man was aware of anything. And the reason why is nothing happened in that house until November 17th, when Jennifer tried to save that child's life. He did not know about any abuse because there was no abuse to know of. Even Millie said he was good to them. Yet he's here. Again, why is he here? Because the police and district attorneys have rushed to judgment and figured if they charged him, he would be so terrified, he would testify against his wife. That's all they wanted. But that would require Joseph to lie. There will be no, I repeat, no evidence that he saw, should have seen, believed, should have believed that his wife was abusing the girls, and that's because she wasn't. The unavoidable truth of the matter is that accident happens, and that sometimes accidents cannot be prevented. You have well-meaning individuals who intend to save the child's life, administering the wrong kind of resuscitative efforts, and instead going through the pancreas and the liver in the efforts to revive this child. The law deals with accidents through the concept of intent. If there was no intent to cause harm, if there was no malice, there's no criminal responsibility. The evidence will show that Jennifer and Joseph's only intent was to provide a loving home for their 2 foster children, and that Jennifer's efforts to save Layla before and while on the phone with 911 resulted in a tragic accident she will have to live with for the rest of her life. You will not see one iota of evidence that shows she ever intended to harm Layla, much less that she and Joseph abused her or her sister. You will hear plenty of evidence, on the other hand, that the Henry County Police and District Attorney's Office saw this case as an opportunity to put a woman who had been a thorn in their side in her place, to poison the community's mind towards this couple and ruin their lives. Now they are placing their lives in your hands, trusting that you will live up to your oath. And I'm going to ask you to take their lives as seriously as you possibly can. Listen to the evidence. Listen to what the people say and question everything. That's why you're here. It's not a decided matter, much as the press would like to make it out to be. It's not a decided matter until you say it's a decided matter. You should listen to the evidence as it comes from the witness stand and from the exhibits, as the judge has told you. Not from the press, not from the newspaper, not from the TV. After you have done that, I will be back up here to ask you to return a verdict of not guilty on all counts, because a verdict is Latin for speaking the truth. And the truth of the matter in this case is that Jennifer tried to save that child's life on November 17th. Jennifer did everything she could to save that child's life. That is the truth. I thank you for keeping an open mind, and I thank you for your service to the cause of justice.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Small. Is the state ready to proceed with this first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh. And call your witness.
State Prosecutor Jones.
That's Caleb Jones.
Kidding.
Mr. John, would you please swear to this?
Yeah.
Just as soon as you're ready. Wait, sir.
Sir, please raise your right hand. You swear from the testimony you're about to give to the truth and the whole truth, so help you God. Thank you. You can lower your hand. I'm actually going to stand over here. Can you please spell your first and last name, sir?
It's Kenneth Jones, Kenneth, Jones.
And sir, are you currently employed?
No, I'm retired
And how long have you been retired?
since 2016.
And what did you do prior to retirement?
I was a firefighter, EMT with Henry County.
And how long were you a firefighter and EMT on the County?
Around 29 years.
And can you just give me a little bit of your background, like your training that you had to have to be a firefighter and EMT?
Well, just your basic firefighting training that any fireman can go through.
And what all does that training include?
Basically, we're taught how to fight fire and just doing rescue techniques, and then on the EMT side, doing basically just ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. As far as the basic goes, just basic medical skills.
Basic medical skills, and does that include, you said A, B, and C? Is that part of the training that you get for, were you trained in CPR?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And when you talk about ABC, is that when you're talking about CPR?
Well, that could pertain to that.
How many hours of training do you have in CPR?
I think it's a 40-hour research every year.
Every year? And what about the Heimlich maneuver? Were you trained in the Heimlich maneuver as part of your training for EMT?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
is that the same 40-hour training, or is that a different training that you go through combined?
It's all incorporated.
So when you learn CPR, you also learn the Heimlich maneuver?
Yes.
And over the course of your career, how many occasions have you had to administer CPR or the Heimlich maneuver?
God, I don't know. A lot.
With over 100, be fair.
Oh, no, I'd say probably 25, 30 times.
Any of those times involve having to perform CPR or Heimlich on a child?
Now, I'm talking about CPR.
CPR, okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'll kind of
Talking about the Heimlich, maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe.
2 or 3 times with the Heimlich. So I'm going to back up on the CPR side. Out of those 25 times, how many times did that involve a child?
Maybe 4 or 5.
And do you recall the situations that caused you to have to perform CPR on the children on those 4 or 5 occasions?
Like what caused it? What happened to it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be anything from an automobile accident to some kind of trauma from, it's really hard to say. I can't remember.
Any, in the Heimlich maneuver, you said about 2 to 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
About how many times did that involve a child?
Maybe 1.
And on that one occasion, were you able to, what are you trying to, I guess,
Clear the airway.
what are you trying to achieve when you perform a Heimlich maneuver?
Just clear the airway.
And were you able to clear the airway on that one time that you performed on a child?
Well, I really don't think there was anything there, but, we still had to, go through the motion of doing it.
And what was the result of that particular child? Did they have to go to the hospital? Did they survive the incident?
Yeah, they went to the hospital, but I don't remember the outcome.
And throughout your 20-plus years as an EMT and firefighter, did you work a certain shift at all, or did it just vary?
It was 24 on, 48 on.
And I want to, were you on duty on November the 17th of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall what hours you were working on that particular day? Or was it all 24 hours?
It's 24 hours shift.
At some point in time, did you get a call to the location of 1521 Lincoln Terrace?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall what time that call came in?
It was in the evening.
and I know it's been a while. If you had an opportunity to review the Henry County Fire Department report, would that help to refresh your recollection as to the time?
Since when?
If you looked at the report from that time, would it help you to refresh?
No, not lately, I haven't. No.
I'm asking if I show it to you now, would it help you to recall what time it was you received the call?
Yeah, I'm sure it
You
would.
know my approach?
Yeah.
Just look at that and tell me that as you recall it. And without reading it after you're done, let me know if that helps.
Yeah, it's around 6 o'clock, so that sounds about right.
And what was the nature of that call?
It was a person choking, I believe.
Did you know the age of the person at that time that the call came in?
Yeah, I believe they said it was 2 years old. Yeah.
And what do you do in preparation to go out to that call? If any?
I mean, once we get dispatched, we get in the truck, go to the call, and on the way over there, we're thinking, well, what are we going to need? And basically, we're on the engine, so we don't have everything that the ambulance has. So we've got a med bag, an AED, which is a defibrillator, and oxygen, and that's what we went into the house with.
And when you arrived to the house, do you recall how long it took you to get there?
To the call?
Yes.
Well, it's on the report right there. It should have took more than 7 minutes, 8 minutes maybe.
And when you arrived to that location, what do you do? First, I'm going to ask you, are you alone or are you with anybody else?
No, me and Lieutenant. It's just 2 of us on the engine.
And what's the lieutenant's name?
Brian Gibson.
And are you the driver or is Lieutenant Gibson the driver?
No, I'm the driver.
And you pull up to 1521 Lincoln Terrace,
Mhm.
and what do you do at that point?
Basically, come off the truck with our gear, let them know we're on the scene, and approach the house and find the patient.
And when you say let them know, you're talking about like you radio
On the
back to
radio, yeah.
dispatch, okay. And when you arrive to the house, is the door open or closed?
I assume it was cool. I really don't remember.
Were you
We
able-
didn't have any trouble getting in. So.
That was my question. Were you able to make entry?
Yeah.
And when you got inside the house, can you tell me what you observed?
When we walked in, I remember seeing a child and her mother in the living room, and I believe she was attempting CPR.
Had you ever
Or
been,
had been.
had you ever been to that home before?
No.
Did you know the person that you described as the mother? Did you know that person at all?
No.
Do you see that person sitting in the courtroom today?
I believe that's her over there.
And if you could just describe the color of clothing that she has on that you indicated.
I'm sorry.
Can you describe what that person is wearing that you indicate you believe is the person you saw?
That day?
No, what they're wearing right now.
What, green and white dress?
And that is the defendant, Jennifer Rosenbaum. Had you seen her prior to November the 17th of 2015?
I mean, just vaguely. Everything happened so quick.
I'm asking, before going to the house that day, on November the 17th of 2015,
Yeah.
had you ever seen
Oh, no.
Jennifer Rosenbaum? Were you familiar with Jennifer Rosenbaum at all? And you say when you walked in the house, you saw the child. Where was the child?
Laying in the living room floor.
Do you remember if the child was dressed or undressed?
I want to say she had a diaper on, maybe a shirt. It's hard to remember because once we took her to the ambulance, then, of course we removed her shirt. If there was one on her, I just know there wasn't one once we got to working on it.
And so when you get inside the house, you said when you entered in, it appeared that the defendant, Ms. Rosenbaum, was standing over the child.
Well, she was right there with her. So,
Is the child laying on the couch, on the table, on the floor?
in the
If you can
floor.
recall.
She was in the floor.
On the floor. And you can recall, was Ms. Rosenbaum standing up? Was she kneeling down? Was she sitting down?
I think she had gotten up when we were there.
So was she actively doing CPR when you, to your recollection, when you came?
I didn't actually see her doing compressions and all that, but I remember seeing she was right there with the child. So,
But you didn't see her actively doing compressions.
no.
And once you come into the house, what do?
Well, basically, Brian, my partner, takes the child and he starts checking for an airway obstruction because that's what the call come out as, choking on a piece of food. And he's trying to clear the airway. And basically, I believe Rescue 13 called out on the scene. When they did, we didn't even have time to break her bags up, and he just grabbed her up and we took off to the truck with her.
Did you ever have any conversation with the defendant, Ms. Rosenbaum, when you got into the house?
No.
Did she say anything to you that you can recall at all?
No.
And you said that Lieutenant Gibson began to check the victim's area. To your knowledge, was there any obstruction found by him?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did you see any vomit or any food particles around the child when you were there?
No.
And you said you barely got able to open up your equipment. Did you ever at that point touch the child or do anything to her?
In the house?
Inside the house?
No, Brian had her.
Did you observe her when Lieutenant Gibson had her?
Yes.
What did you observe at that time?
She was unresponsive,
And when you say unresponsive, what does that mean?
unconscious.
Was she breathing?
We wasn't sure, you know, we were assuming that she wasn't. So,
And did you check for a pulse?
I believe Brian did,
Do
yeah.
you know whether or not there was a pulse?
I don't think there was.
I object to him testifying to what he thinks, he testifies to what he knows or doesn't know. He doesn't know. He needs to say he doesn't know.
All right, same objection. This is under speculation.
Yes, sir. I'm the one. How long were you inside the house once you arrived? Let me back up. You said that Lieutenant Gibson checked for an airway. And what else did he do while you were inside the house that you observed?
Well, he would have been checking for a pulse, checking the airway. But he was the one doing it, not me. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yes, she did have one or she didn't have one, because he was the one with his hands on her. I'm standing there observing. So
You observed him checking for an airway, checking for a pulse. Did you observe him doing anything else?
no, by that time we were going, a lot of this was happening in motion.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's happening
Yeah.
full speed, not
Yeah.
question by question as I'm asking.
Yeah.
I understand. Do you recall if you did anything else?
Inside the house?
Yes, sir.
No.
At some point, do y'all leave outside the house?
Yeah.
Where do you go?
We're going straight out the front door, going to the ambulance.
And what happens when you get inside the ambulance?
Well, we put her on the stretcher, and the paramedics on the ambulance is there, and his partner, which is basically the same qualified as I am, and we just start I start compressions on her, doing CPR, and I believe Brian or either Scott, the other paramedic, were getting ready to get the airway intubated.
He believes that's what happened. Again, that's speculation. He believes that's what was happening.
Mr. Plus?
I would just ask you whatever you recall. If you don't recall
Yeah.
something, you can say you don't. know
Okay.
That's fine. Don't want you to speculate.
Well, one of the two guys were getting an airway established on the child, and I was doing compressions
And when you say you were doing compressions, what area of the body are you doing compressions on?
in the chest area,
Okay.
between the nipple line, in between the nipple to nipple.
And are you using one hand, both hands? What are you using to do your compressions with?
I'm using one hand.
And with CPR, is it just compressions that you do? Tell me how CPR works.
Well, we're doing compressions. It's on a child. It's like 30 compressions to 2 breaths. So I'm doing compressions on them. They're breathing her.
And you said they're breathing. Who's breathing?
I don't remember if it was Scott or Brian. One of them was there giving her oxygen, giving her breaths.
At no point did you have to do compressions.
No, like I said, I was just doing compressions
And about how long did you do compressions?
all the way to the hospital.
During the time that you were in the ambulance, did you have an opportunity to observe anything else about the child?
Well, I mean, she was in full view of me. So,
What
yeah, I
did you
mean,
observe at that time?
well, I mean, she had bruises on her. That was probably the main thing that stood out.
Do you recall where you observed those bruises?
Yeah, there were some down around her diaper, top of her diaper line, on her wrists, her arms, legs.
Anywhere else did you see any bruises on her?
Yeah, they were on her back too.
During the time that you were in the ambulance and you were applying compression, to your knowledge, did the child ever vomit or any food or any obstruction come out of her throat?
I didn't see it.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as case exhibit number 1 and previously shown to defense counsel. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And what is that?
bruising on her back.
And is that the child in the way you saw her on November the 17th, 2015?
Pretty much.
And is
Yeah.
that a fair and accurate depiction of what you observed?
Yes.
I ask the state's exhibit number 1 be entered into evidence.
Any objection? Case one is in favor.
And may I publish it, Judge?
You may.
Jones, in any cases in which you've had to administer CPR on a child, have you seen bruises like that before?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Mr. Jones, did you check the drains of the kitchen drains?
Did I check the drains?
Yes.
No, I'm not a plumber.
You didn't check the floor either, did you?
What area?
The area in the kitchen area.
No.
And you testified here today that you did not see her doing compressions, that she had gotten up by the time you had gotten there.
Well, I just remember my partner saying that, I believe he said she told him that she was doing compressions, but she was there by the child.
Isn't it true, Mr. Jones, that you wrote a statement about this case?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that true?
I believe, yeah, I sent one in.
And isn't it true in your statement, you said you saw the mother over the child performing CPR?
Yeah.
That's what you said, back in November of 2015.
Okay.
Is that correct?
If that's what I wrote down, that's what I said.
If I may approach you.
All right. Yeah.
That's what you said, that you saw her doing compressions on the child.
Well, I saw her over her.
What did you say in your report?
Yeah, I said I saw her saw the mother over the child performing CPR in the living room floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right. Any brief?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. Step down. And any objection to this witness being excused?
None from the state, Your Honor.
Any objection to this witness being excused?
No objection, I'm just asking for.
Okay, am I permanently,
Pardon me?
The picture cannot be projected on the record.
Okay.
am I permanently excused?
Mr. Jones, you're excused, which means that you're released from the case.
All right. Thank you.
The state will call the next witness.
Raise your hand. So I want you to swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Put your hand down. Please take it true and correct name for the record.
All right, Donald Cleveland, Henry County Coroner.
And you mentioned you're the Henry County coroner. What exactly does that mean?
The coroner is responsible for determining, working along with the police rather, to determine the cause and manner of death. But I have to report cases to the medical examiner's office to seek further guidance on whether an exam is going to be performed or not.
Okay. You also mentioned the term medical examiner. What is a medical examiner?
Medical examiner is a certified medical doctor, board certified rather, pathologist.
And so what is the difference between the county coroner and the medical examiner?
Basically, you could sum it up that I'm the eyes and ears for the medical examiner until the body gets in their possession.
And does every county in the state of Georgia have a medical examiner?
All except 4 of them.
Okay. And why don't the
Oh, excuse me, all counties have medical examiner?
I'm sorry, all counties have a coroner.
All except 4 of them,
And why did the 4 of those counties not have a coroner?
because they have the medical examiner system where their counties are so large that they chose to abolish the office and go forward with the medical examiner.
The medical examiner that you provide cases for, who is the medical examiner with? What agency?
Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And do you routinely work or send cases to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes.
Are all of the cases, though, that you respond to, all of them go to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
No.
What makes that determination as to a case that goes there versus one that does not?
Depending on medical history of the person and the law says anybody, I believe, under the age of 7 is required to have an autopsy.
So if a child is 2 years of age, the law requires them to have an autopsy?
Yes, or the medical examiner, if the child has was born with some kind of genetic issues, then the medical examiner can override that and say, we're not going to be doing an exam.
What are some of the qualifications to become the coroner in a county?
The state just basically says you have to be 25 years or older, live in the county in which you're going to serve for at least 2 years prior to running, be a U.S. citizen, be a registered voter, and have a high school diploma or GED.
Is there any medical training that is required to be a coroner?
No.
Can you tell me how long you have been the coroner here in Henry County?
I've been doing this full-time since 2010, and prior to that I was part-time deputy coroner for 2 years.
And what kind of work did you do prior to becoming coroner?
I was a funeral director and embalmer.
Is the coroner an elected position?
It is.
And when were you you said you were appointed in 2010.
Yes.
How have you remained the coroner since then?
In 2012, I believe, was election year, and 2016 was election year, and both times I prevailed.
And is there any training that's associated with being a county coroner?
We have to attend 24 hours a year training at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center.
On average, since you've been the Henry County coroner, how many cases do you see per year?
Over 300.
And without being flip, are all of these people by definition deceased?
Yes,
So you were not called out unless someone is deceased.
that is correct.
Have you ever responded to cases where a child has been, the decedent has been a juvenile?
Yes.
And do you see as many of those as you do adult cases?
No.
Did you respond to the death of Laila Daniel?
I did.
And was that on November 17th of 2015?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury how you first became involved in this particular case?
Okay. I was notified by the Henry County 911 Center. They had received a call from the nursing supervisor at the hospital stating that they had had a child to come in deceased, and was notifying me of that, and so I instructed the nurse to secure the room, and I would be en route to the hospital.
And you instructed them to secure the room. Why do you do that?
To preserve any kind of evidence that might be there, and that's really if I go up there for a gunshot victim of a 90-year-old or whether it be a child. I mean, it's just protocol.
Were you given any history or any reason as to how the child ended up at the emergency room?
The nurse told me the child came in via ambulance.
You would object to what the nurse told, that's hearsay?
In this case, I think it's not hearsay. We're not offering for the truth of the matter asserted. It's simply to further his investigation as to why he responded and how he did, or why he did what he did.
Close member objection. Close member objection. Overruled.
The nurse instructed me that the child came in via Henry County ambulance and was pronounced deceased, and that the child, it was reported that the child was choking, and that's the reason that EMS responded.
When you arrived at the hospital, what did you observe?
When I got to the hospital, there was a deputy standing guard of the room, and I proceeded to make my way to the nurse's station and met with the nursing supervisor who called me, and then she escorted me to the room.
And when you went into the room, what did you see?
There was a decedent child lying on the bed, covered with a sheet.
And what did you do after you first walked into the room?
I put rubber gloves on to work with the crime scene technician to take photos of the child.
And what were your initial observations when you saw the child's body?
Initial observations was, wow, there was markings all over the child.
Have you, as the county coroner, ever responded to other situations in which resuscitative methods were used?
Yes.
Have you, and I want to be a little bit more specific, have you responded to other cases where CPR was used?
Yes.
To attempt to resuscitate?
Right.
Have you responded to any situations where the Heimlich maneuver was attempted?
No.
Okay. In the situations that you observed with CPR, would what you saw in Laila Daniel's body consistent with anything you had seen?
Yes.
What was consistent?
There was a airway in place that was secured by a strap around the neck. She had a bandage over her right leg that, and on the left leg, she had what's called an IO, which is an interosseous, which is basically a mechanical method of putting it into the bone so that when they issue drugs, it goes into the body very quick for the resuscitative efforts.
I want to back up. You had said that you had seen bruising on Laila's body. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was bruising that you saw consistent with other cases that you responded to where resuscitative methods had been used?
No.
Anywhere close?
No.
I want to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibits 2 through 75, which has previously been shown to defense. And sir, have you had an opportunity to look through those exhibits?
I have.
And what are those? What are exhibits 2 through 75?
Those are exhibits of the child lying in the hospital room, the photographs taken.
Were you present when these photographs were taken?
I was.
Were you assisting in taking these photographs?
Yes.
And do these photographs fairly and accurately represent the condition that you saw the body on November 17th, 2015?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit States Exhibits 2 through 75 into evidence.
Your Honor, at this time, we would object to 2 through 75. I think we got some detailed pictures of that.
And if there's a specific, there are many pictures in there, in fact 74, but some of them may be of the same part of the body, one of which is with is without the measuring device, and the other is with the measuring device as well.
This is my question.
Yes.
Does every picture depict something new or different?
Yes, with the exception of sometimes there's a measuring device and sometimes there is not. And I can show you. The court would like to see
What we're trying to stay away from is cumulative. And so, you wish to look at these? You've looked at them? And do you disagree that they are each of something different?
I don't think they're each of something different, no. Some of them are repetitive.
Okay, I'm going to have you get one by one. How does Ruby say?
Okay. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 2?
Yes.
What do you recognize State's Exhibit 2 to be?
That was the child lying on the hospital bed is when I walked in the room and removed the sheet.
Okay. And does that fairly accurately represent the way that you observed the child when you first walked in?
It is.
You know, at the time I moved to State's Exhibit 2.
Admitted?
And what are we looking at in State's Exhibit 2?
You're looking at a deceased child lying there on the hospital bed with the resuscitative measures in her mouth, specifically in airway. We have 2 EKG pads, and there's a AED pad on the upper right side of the child. And then on the legs there, you have the bandage, and then on the on the left leg, the pink color is that interosseous, the IO.
Okay. And there's actually a pointer in there if you want to point to some of the things that you just talked about. What are the items that you just spoke about?
Right there is the airway that is used for resuscitative efforts. This right here is a Velcro piece that's used to hold the airway in place. Right there is the AED pad attached. Here are the EKG pads. Right here is the bandage covered leg. And there is what's on the endoscopy.
Okay. And is this kind of an overview picture that you take at the very beginning?
Yes.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 3?
Yes.
What do you recognize State's Exhibit 3 to be?
That is another overall shot, but this one shows more of the pediatric AED pad on.
Okay. And is this image closer than the initial overview photo you take?
It is.
And does this fairly accurately represent what you saw Laila Daniel on that day?
Yes.
Can I move to State's Exhibit 3?
Can you look at the same picture?
Overall?
So what are the things that we see here in this particular image?
Again, here's a more definitive view of the AED pad, and then again, the airway, the EKG pads.
Okay. And earlier you mentioned bruising. Do you see any examples of bruising in this particular image?
I do. I see some right there. I see some here, and some there, and I see some over here.
And does the glare make it a little difficult to see some of those?
Yes.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5. What do you recognize State's 5 to be?
This is a more definitive up-close shot of the placement of the airway tube.
Okay. And does this fairly accurately represent the way you saw Laila Daniel that day?
Yes.
You're on the time of moving to State's 5. State's 5. And what are we looking at here?
A more up-close shot of the airway, and then there's some mucus right there.
Okay. I want to show you State's 6. What do you recognize State's 6 to be?
This is going to be the right side photo of her lying on the bed, of the facial area. Upper body.
And it's fairly accurately represents Laila Daniel on that
Yes.
day? You're going to move to State 6.
State 6 is admitted.
And what are we looking at in State 6?
Right here, we're looking again at the airway tube placement, and then the pediatric AED pad, and then there's some bruising going on right there.
And what part of the body are you referring to when you say, when you were pointing to some bruising that you observed?
That's going to be more so on the upper left side of the chest area.
And am I accurate when I say it this way?
Yes.
That's kind of almost near my shoulder?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you State 7. What do you recognize State 7 to be?
This is going to be the left side of the child.
Okay. And does this fairly accurately represent Laila Daniel?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit state 7.
State 7's admitted.
And what are we looking at on this picture?
The opposite side of the picture showing the placement of the airway tube.
Okay. And in this particular photo, do you see any, can you start to see any injury in the head area?
Not right off, I can't because of the glare.
Okay. We'll get some other photos. Stage 9. What do you recognize stage 9 to be?
This is a facial shot of the left side of her face.
Okay. And this fairly accurately represents what you saw that day?
It does.
I moved to admit stage 9.
Admitted state 9.
What are we looking at here?
Here, again, some mucus there, and there were some markings here that were scales placed to get a definitive measurement of it.
Now, when you take these photographs, are you documenting just everything that you see?
Yes,
So you're not definitively saying every single marking is used.
that is correct.
But at this point, you're just documenting everything you see?
So that I can report it to the medical examiner.
Okay. And so is this something that you thought was worth documenting?
Yes.
Showing to show you states 10, what do you recognize states 10 to be?
That would be a photo shot of underneath the neck of the child.
And does this fairly accurately represent that area of the body that you observed on November 17th?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 10.
No objection.
Admitted states 10.
If I can, I might turn off another light and might have the glare a little bit better.
Well, that's wrong.
It was.
They were fine.
Just need the one above RP. Is that better? Look. What are we observing on stage 10?
Right here, since we already had so many different shots of the airway, we are focused more on the markings here on the neck.
And is that, what part of the face are you looking at there?
That would be right underneath the area of the chin.
Okay, so underneath the chin? So kind of, if I'm pointing correct, that's what helps, kind of down here?
Yes, kind of down here.
What are we looking at in, let's get that, with this stage 12?
The front part of her head. Forehead.
And this fairly accurately represents what you saw on that day?
It is.
I moved to mid stage 12.
No objection.
Stage 12 is admitted.
What are we looking at in stage 12?
We were just notating the markings here.
And what are we looking at in stage 13?
Basically the same thing as that one, but it has the scale there.
And what are we looking at in stage 14?
Here we have scale and some markings on the face that are not the same as those markings.
Your Honor, I moved to mid stage 13.
Stage 13 is here admitted.
And is this just the one we see with that same mark that we were just looking at with the scale?
Yes.
All right. How about stage 14? You said that these were different marks?
Yes, we have one there and one there.
And again, you're just kind of documenting everything?
Yes, sir.
I want to show you what's been marked as states 15, 16, 17, and 18. What do you recognize these to be?
These are pictures of the child's eyes, left and right.
Okay. Do they fairly accurately represent what you saw that day?
They do.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 15, 16, 17, and 18.
No objection.
And why do
15, 16, 17, and 18.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Judge. And why do you specifically look at the eyes?
We look for any types of pinpoint hemorrhages that would be sort of red in color. They are called petechial hemorrhages, and basically it is a indication that there could be some type of asphyxiation around the death of the person.
What do you mean by the term asphyxiation?
Strangulation, asphyxiation, going up behind somebody, choking them.
Okay. And I'm just going to go through states 15 through 18. Did you see any signs of that?
No.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked states 19, 20, and 21. Do you recognize these exhibits?
I do.
What do you recognize them today?
Pictures of her ear. It appears to be her left ear.
Okay. And they fairly accurately represent what you saw in that particular day?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit states 19 to 21.
Your Honor, I think those are the same pictures. As the court reviewed.
And Your Honor, the state's response is that the different views of that particular injury are important for the jury to be able to see.
States 19, 20, and 21 are good.
Thank you, Judge. What are we looking at in State's Exhibit 19?
Taking notation of the markings on the ear here.
And what, when you say markings, what do you mean by that?
There's discolorations there, and I'm just notating that for the file so that again I can report it to the medical examiner.
States 20.
Same thing, but this time it's with the scale.
And how about states 21? What are we looking at here?
A different view of it, of the markings there.
Okay. And by markings, what kind of markings would have
Discolorations.
Do states exhibit 22? What are we looking at in states exhibit 22?
Appears of the ear again, and it looks to be based upon this. It looks to be the left ear.
Okay. And is this fair and accurate representation?
It does.
Okay. You're going to move to mid states 22.
Admitted states 22.
What are we looking at in states 22?
Just a more, I think she's trying to give more scale picture there, but it looks like it's blurred. There's some markings right there on the inside of the ear.
And what are those markings consistent with anything?
They're just discolorations.
I want to show you states 25. What do you recommend states 25 and 26 to be?
This looks to be the scalp of the child, and there are some markings there that were documented.
Did everything accurately represent what we saw that day?
It does.
You're going to move to admit states 25 and 26.
States 25 and 26 are admitted.
And what are we looking at in states 25?
There's some markings here and there.
And what part of the body are we looking at here?
Again, from those pictures, it looks like to be in this area here.
So you are pointing to what area of your body?
Around the scalp area here, the occipital region.
To the top of your head?
Mhm.
All right.
Right now, so it's more than that.
Show you what the market states 27, 28, 27, 28, 29, and 31. Do you recognize these?
I do.
And what do you recognize in states?
Photos of different discolorations on the body.
These fairly accurately represent what you saw on November 17th.
It does.
You're going to move to admit states 27, 28, 29, and 31.
Admitted.
And what are we looking at? First of all, what part of the body are we looking at here?
That looks to be around the neck area on the left side of the lower left ear.
And what did you note of interest in this particular photograph?
The discolorations there. I think that like this whole area here and in there.
How about states 28? What are we looking at in states 28?
A more close-up shot of those markings.
States 29.
Again, scale markings.
And states 31, what are we looking at in states 31? What part of the body, I should say?
That's going to be around the right side of the mid-chest area. You have your electrical defibrillator pad, and below it, we were documenting the markings here.
Okay. States 32 and 33, what do you recognize these two?
Photos taken of the left side here.
These fairly accurately represent what you saw on November 17th of 2015.
Who does?
You're going to move to admit states 32 and 33.
Admitted 32 and 33.
What are we looking at? What part of the body are we looking at?
And we're looking at this area right here, and we have some bruising going on there and here.
Okay, and just so the record's clear, when you say right here, what part of the body are you pointing to?
Left side.
Left side. What part of the chest are you pointing to?
Around the nipple area.
Was that above or in relation to the nipple? Where was the bruising that you saw?
It's up above it, probably. I don't have a scale there, so we would say a half inch, maybe. And then you have some bruising here, and then underneath the left arm over there.
And when you have responded to other situations where CPR has been used, do you ever see bruising on the side and upper part of the chest like that from CPR?
No.
States Exhibit 33. What are we looking at in States Exhibit 33?
Looking at markings of the bruising below the nipple line, over on the left side, again, underneath the forearm.
So we're getting closer to the armpit, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibit 34. What do you recognize States 34 to be?
The left side of her torso and her left arm.
Okay. That fairly accurately represents what you saw on November 17th, 2015.
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit States 34.
States 34.
And what are we looking at in States 34?
We were notating some markings there, with more so the left arm, how there was discolorations on that arm.
I'm going to show you States 36, 37, 38, and 39. What do you recognize these to be?
Pictures of her right arm.
And they fairly accurately represent what you saw on November 17th, 2015.
They do.
Your Honor, I move to admit those exhibits. Your Honor, that's fine. After discussion with the defense counsel, we will admit 36, 37, and 38.
All right. Any objections? 36, 37, 38. Admit.
What are we looking at here in States 36?
Well, a couple of things. One, we want to make sure we got a picture of arm and definitely identifying because we were there for it. But you have some markings here and some markings up here.
Okay. And what arm are we looking at?
That is the right arm.
What are we looking at in States 37?
You were looking at the inside of the right hand when we were documenting bruising there.
And so what part of the body were you pointing to?
That would be right here.
So on the palm, correct?
On the right hand.
All right. What about States 38?
We were notating the different markings on the right arm on the underside of it.
I neglected to ask you already about how long after Layla was pronounced dead were these photographs taken?
Approximately an hour and a half.
I'm going to show you some marking statements. It's 40, 42, 43, and 44. Do you recognize them?
I do.
What do you recognize them to be?
Pictures of her left hand.
Okay. Do they fairly accurately represent, do they fairly accurately represent what you observed on that particular day?
They did.
Your Honor, I admit States 40, 42, 43, and 44 in evidence.
Admit.
What are we looking at in States 40?
This blood stain right there.
In States 41, 42.
More blood stains, and that looks to be on the inside palm of the left hand.
Okay. Did you note any bruising on the inside palm of the left hand? If you need me to, I can show you the actual image itself.
Can I see the actual image?
Sure.
I'll pull that out. That's good to see it there.
Okay.
Right here, which would appear to be bruising.
And is that the same general area as the other hand, and you observe that same similar?
Yes. Yeah. On the palm. Yeah.
States 43, what are we looking at?
Appears to be some type of blood stain there.
Okay. And again, just documenting everything you
Just
see.
documenting
States 44, what are we looking at?
the markings right there and with the scale.
I am going to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibits 45, 46, 48, 50, and 51. Do you recognize these documents?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
Pictures of the abdominal area.
Do they fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day?
They do.
Your Honor, to admit States 45, 46, 48, 50, and 51.
Admit.
What are we seeing in States 45?
There's the navel, 2 EKG pads, markings there, and markings there, and there.
Do you also see any areas of discoloration in the skin?
Yeah, discoloration in the skin, yes, there and there.
How about any discolorations that would be lighter in color?
Lighter in
Yes.
color? Maybe this there, based upon lighting.
Okay. How about States Exhibit 46? What are we looking at?
More discolorations there. That was next to the EKG pad.
So in States 46, can you just help orient us what part of the body are we looking at here?
You are looking at the lower left abdominal.
Okay. And what part, like, I guess, what bone would that be near?
Your pelvic bone is going to be right there.
How about States Exhibit 48? What are we looking at in States 48?
You're looking at the right lower abdominal area. And again, pelvic bone being there, discolorations there, and then some type of skin slippage there.
What do you mean by skin slippage?
Skin tear.
So that's not a bruise, that's something different.
That's something different, yes.
What are we looking at States 50?
That area there. And the some discolorations there, of course, with the scale.
And how about States Exhibit 51? What are we looking at in States Exhibit 51?
Let me see the picture. Get my bearings. It appears that is the right side of the child, a little further back, since the diaper is right there. And the pelvic bone is going to be about right in there.
And what are you pointing to? You were moving the pointer around some areas of the body. What were you pointing to?
The markings are there, and then of course the diaper, and then the scale.
Want to move on to States Exhibits 52, 53, 54, and 56. What are we looking at here?
You are looking at the genital area of the child.
And does fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day.
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit States 52, 53, 54, and 56. Prove it. What are we looking at States 52?
We were notating the markings here, those have already been previously discussed, and so we're taking an overall picture of that.
So this area that we're looking at was previously underneath the diaper?
Yes.
And you were pointing to the area, certain areas. What parts of the body were you pointing to?
Later holes right there, and then the unit area there.
And those are all areas that you observed bruising?
Yes.
States Exhibit 53. What are we looking at in States 53?
A more close area of the vaginal area on both sides.
In all the years that you've been in the coroner, have you ever seen CPR-related injuries in the vaginal area?
No.
What about States Exhibit 54?
That is on the inside portion of the right leg.
Okay. And just so we orient the jury, to the right is the vagina?
Yes.
And you said that was the interior portion of the right leg?
Yes.
And what are we looking at here?
That we were notating the discolorations there.
What about States Exhibit 56? What are we looking at in States Exhibit 56?
The discolorations there.
And is that what? I guess what's the angle of this particular shot?
Standing over the child on the bed, rolling your leg toward me.
So are we looking at her from the back side at this point?
The picture was taken, yes, on the back side.
State 75, what are we looking at in State 75?
The rectal area.
That area that accurately represents what you saw on that particular day?
Yes.
Your Honor, we do admit State 75.
Okay.
And what are we looking at in State 75?
We were notating the discolorations there.
I can move it down, sorry.
Notating the discolorations.
Was there anything about the anus that stood out to you in particular?
No, no.
As the coroner, did you have any concerns about any dilated anus?
No.
Did you personally have any concerns about possible sexual abuse during your investigation?
No.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as States Exhibits 57, 58, and 59. We're looking at these three exhibits.
We're looking at the lower legs, or the mid leg down.
And that's fairly accurately represents what you saw on that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, we admit States 57, 58, 59.
Okay.
And what are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 57?
All right, that's just an overall shot of the lower extremities, showing the bandage and the intraosseous, of course, along with the discolorations.
Okay. And I'll show you State's Exhibit 58, or some of those discolorations you previously saw.
Yes,
And State's 59, is that just the discolorations with the markings?
that is correct.
Show you State's Exhibit 60. What do you recognize State's 60 doing?
The backside of the lower extremities.
And did that fairly accurately represent what we saw on that day?
It does.
Have there been any modifications, alterations, deletions to that photograph?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to admit State's Exhibit 60 into evidence.
Admit.
Well, I'm here. I'll also have you authenticate State 61, 62, 64, and 65. Do you recognize State's exhibits?
Yes, those are pictures of the child's ankles.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I do State's Exhibit 61, 62, 64, and 65 into evidence.
Admitted.
What are we looking at State 60?
That is the backside of the lower extremities of the child. So basically, you can describe it as we roll the child over on her stomach and it's taking a picture of the lower part. Notating again the discolorations.
And what are we looking at in State 61?
That is her left ankle.
And in State 62, what are we looking at? And I can bring it up to you if you need me to.
No, that's the left ankle, but it's more the discoloration right here.
How about State 64?
That's the right foot ankle area, and again, notating the discolorations.
And State 65?
Same thing, but with the skin.
I'll show you some previously marked as State 67, 68, 69, 70, 72, 73, and 74. Do you recognize these exhibits?
Yes, these are different photos of the backside of the child.
And did they fairly accurately represent what you saw on that particular day?
They do.
Your Honor, the State 67, 68, 69, 70, 72, and 73, and 74.
3 minutes.
What are we looking at in State 67?
That's the backside of the child, the whole back. And we were notating all the discolorations.
And have you ever responded to other child deaths in your career?
Yes.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
No.
How about State Exhibit 68?
More close-up photo of all the markings.
State Exhibit 69?
The lower portion of the back and the markings.
What are we looking at in State Exhibit 70?
This is the upper back and then the markings there.
State Exhibit 72?
Markings with the scale.
And what are we
Again, on the backside.
on the backside? 73.
Again, markings with the scale on the back, since there's the top of the buttock area.
And State 74.
Again, pictures of the backside.
Have you, in all the cases, whether adult or pediatric, have you ever seen anything like this when you went out resuscitated medicine that you used?
No.
Now, are you aware, are you familiar with a child by the name of Millie Place? You also familiar
Yes.
with that child? Did you actually meet with Millie or examine Millie on November 17th of 2015?
No.
And why is that?
I don't mean to be funny, but she wasn't dead.
Let me ask you, did you ever interact with either Jennifer Rosenbaum or Joseph Rosenbaum on November 17th of 2015?
I, myself, along with 2 other personnel, went into the quiet room and met with them. And that's the first time I had actually physically talked with her.
Okay. And when you walked in, what were your initial observations?
It's a small room, and there was 4 to 5 people in there, and it was hot.
Did Ms. Rosenbaum say anything to you?
I introduced myself, and I asked her to tell me what transpired, and she proceeded to tell me that she found the child shaking in the high chair after she had come back from going and getting Millie ready, because I believe she was going to go to Ms. Rosenbaum was going to go to a commissioner's meeting.
You can speak up just a little for us.
I said, she said that she found Layla in the high chair shaking when she came back from getting Millie ready to go, Mrs. Rosenbaum was going to go to a Board of Commissioners meeting.
And what did she say that happened after she came back from getting Millie ready?
That she saw the child shaking in the high chair. She picked the child up, called 911, and performed CPR, and until the EMS arrived.
And that was the history that you received from Ms. Rosenbaum?
Yes, and that she was possibly choking on chicken nuggets.
Did that history appear to be consistent with the examination you did of Laila Daniel in the hospital that day?
Not really, no.
Why do you say that?
No objection. He's not been qualified as an expert in medicine. Maybe it's just
I'm simply asking if it's consistent with the other. Let me ask it this way: is it consistent with other cases in which you've responded to with perhaps a similar history?
No.
Do you know either Jennifer Rosenbaum or Joseph Rosenbaum prior to that day?
No, I do not.
Have you ever heard of either of them prior to that day?
No.
Have you ever? Let me ask you this: do you ever attend Board of Commissioners meetings?
I don't attend them personally. However, I do watch it on the internet.
Okay. Have you ever seen either Ms. Rosenbaum or Mr. Rosenbaum at any of the meetings that you watch on the internet?
Yes, Ms. Rosenbaum would come to the meetings, and during the public speaking session, she would get up and voice concerns.
And what were your thoughts when you saw Ms. Rosenbaum giving those public concerns?
I applauded her, young age and tackling the county. So
And again, you're an elected official.
I am.
Tell me a little bit about the demeanor of Ms. Rosenbaum when you were meeting with her in that hospital room.
It was different than meeting with other child families, not of the same death, but just child in general. I didn't observe much emotion, like her eyes wasn't red or swollen like she had been crying. It's not to say she hadn't been, but I was just a little struck by that. And then during that time we were talking with her, Mr. Rosenbaum come in because if I remember correctly, I think he was at work.
Okay. And what did you observe when Mr. Rosenbaum came in?
He had the look on his face like, what has happened? Just because I'm sure it was a phone call.
Object to him speculating about what he's sure of.
That's fine. Can you just say, not speculate, just exactly what you observed?
I observed him come in and he sat down beside Ms. Rosenbaum.
Okay. To be fair, could the response that you saw from Ms. Rosenbaum could it also be consistent with shock?
It could be, yes.
Now, what occurs after you were done with photographing the body? What happens to the body at that point?
At that time, the hospital was instructed to place the child downstairs in the morgue until I could notify the GBI and arrange an autopsy. And then once notification to the GBI was done, they tell me to have the child there on a particular day. And then I made arrangements for the child to be picked up at the hospital and transported to the GBI.
And more specifically, how did the child get from the hospital to the GBI? Do you personally take her or something?
No, a transportation company that I employ as the coroner transported her.
And is this the protocol that you use for all deaths where the GBI will be performing an autopsy?
Yes.
Do you recall the date that the body was released to the GBI?
November the 18th, I think.
And that would have been the day after the death?
Yes.
Did you attend the autopsy in this case?
I did.
And do you attend all autopsies?
No,
Why did you attend this particular one?
because of the different bruising and the circumstances surrounding things.
Now, when you attend the autopsy, are you actually participating?
I am not. I am standing away from the remains. The morgue technician along with the pathologist are around the remains.
So you're not actually performing any portion of the autopsy itself?
I'm not even touching the person.
Nothing further this time.
Okay, you still need the light off?
Sorry.
You still need the light off? Yes. The light?
Oh, yeah, no, we can turn it back on.
Well, we're ready.
My name is Maria Mall. I just have a few questions for you. You don't have a medical degree, is that correct?
That is correct.
So you've got no medical training whatsoever.
That is correct.
And you have testified here today that you have seen other deaths from CPR,
Yes, ma'am.
or where CPR was applied.
Yes, ma'am.
And were those deaths where CPR was correctly applied?
What's your version of correctly?
Well, what I'm asking you is, do you know whether CPR was correctly applied in the case of Laila Daniel? Do you know that?
I can't. I wasn't there, so I cannot definitively say that.
You don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
And the bodies that you had examined, that you said you had examined, who'd been subjected to Heimlich maneuver, that was one child, is that correct?
No, I have never had. I said I've never seen anybody CPR done on somebody with a Heimlich maneuver.
Okay, well, let's be clear here. There's two separate things. I don't know if you know that. One is the Heimlich maneuver. Do you know what the Heimlich maneuver is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is that?
That is where you stand behind a person who is choking and you perform thrust into their abdominal area to try to dislodge the object.
And you have never seen the results of the Heimlich maneuver, have you?
On a child, no, ma'am.
And you have never seen the results of CPR on a child that was improperly done, where adult CPR was performed.
No, ma'am.
You've never seen that.
No,
So
ma'am.
your testimony here today that this case is dissimilar from your other cases would be understandable, wouldn't it?
You would have to form that opinion yourself.
But clearly, you have not seen prior to this date, you have not seen a Heimlich maneuver on a child, and you have not seen an improperly administered CPR on a child, have you?
No, ma'am, because I don't respond to the scenes when it's being performed.
And you told Mr. Chase that this did not look like a CPR case, like CPR cases that you have seen, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the CPR cases that you have seen were not cases where adult CPR was applied on the child, were they?
That is correct.
And these cases were not Heimlich maneuver cases on the child, were they?
No, ma'am.
Now, you basically took those pictures that we saw just a moment ago, and you just document what you see, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you saw bruising going from the pubic area on up, correct?
I would say bruising from head to toe.
It was not consistent bruising all the way down. The child had bruises on her legs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And had bruising on the back,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Now, did you, in fact, report to the, you said you were the eyes and ears of the medical examiner, correct?
Yes, yes.
Did you, in fact, report to the medical examiner?
I did. Not to, I'm going to be specific here, not to the medical examiner themselves, to one of the death investigative personnel that answered the phone.
Ms. Lovelace?
No, I called the GBI main number and reported.
With regards to, did you, in fact, tell the GBI that Jennifer had told you they were seated at the table eating chicken tenders when the choking occurred?
That's what, yes.
And did you tell them that the child was flailing in her chair?
I don't recall flailing, I said shaking.
See if this refreshes your recollection.
Sure. Where you wanted me to focus, Ms. Mom? Okay. If it's there, then I probably did say yes, ma'am. But you got to remember, I call in so many deaths, I can't tell you exactly
But this
verbiage.
was sorry. This one was different, right?
Any child death's different.
And you did report that she was flailing in her chair,
Yes, ma'am.
which could account
Flailing.
for some of the bruising on the arms, correct?
I don't have a medical degree, so you'd have to ask the doctor about that.
And you saw bruising inside the ear, as if something had been stuck in the ear.
I wouldn't call it bruising, I'd say discolorations.
Discolorations. Now, you were not concerned with the dilation of the anus. Why is that?
Because it wasn't reported to me that that was part of the report that was given to the hospital.
Okay, but you were there documenting.
Yeah, that's just part of standard procedure.
But you yourself, based on your experience, were not concerned about the dilation.
That's correct.
And the reason you weren't concerned is because that's normal at death. A lot of times the anus will dilate.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Ms. Mullins, please.
I want to show you, Ms. Mull referenced the abdominal area, so I just wanted to go back there real quick. She said that, well, I'm going to turn the lights off really briefly again. She mentioned bruising that on the abdominal area, correct? Right. Do you see any bruising in the center part of the stomach area? As in, like, not on the side?
Like that area?
No, in the come down. Yeah, so it's just above the diaper. Do you see any bruising in that kind of general area above you, right?
Just that area right there. That's it.
Okay. You don't see, so you see it on the side, but not in the center, correct?
That's great. I don't see anything right there.
You can see. That was the only thing I had regarding the projector. The flailing in the chair comment that was written in your report, would that have been something that you, part of the history that you received from the defendant?
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have been
Shaking and flailing pretty much are the same.
But that would have been something that she told you at her mouth, correct?
It possibly could have been, yes.
But as we talked about before, you only respond when a person dies, correct?
Correct.
So it's safe to say you've never seen someone die from the Heimlich maneuver.
I've never seen somebody die from the Heimlich maneuver, no, sir.
And one last question, do you have any political vendettas against either defendant?
No, I don't know.
Nothing that way.
Yes, but isn't it true that when you met Ms. Jennifer Rosenbaum at the hospital, and she introduced herself to you, you said, "Oh, you're that Jennifer Rosenbaum," isn't that true?
Yes, ma'am.
If I can follow up on that briefly, can you tell me a little more about what you said, or what you meant by that?
Because she's the one that I've seen on the commissioners' meetings when I'd watch them on the internet, or over the internet, and noticed that she was the one coming up speaking during public comments.
Did you have any ill will at all towards Ms. Rosenbaum when you said that particular comment?
No.
Ms. Mull, anything else? Please don't step down.
Am I permanently excused?
Yes, are you have any objections? Any excuse?
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Is this a suitable stopping point? Do we have another witness?
We do have other witnesses, Your Honor.
Well, generally, I like to keep the reserves here from 9 to 5. So if we don't have a short witness, then we can just go ahead and take our break for this evening and then sit right back here at 9 o'clock.
I think with witnesses that we have lined up now, we're pretty much, so I would say it's probably good.
All right, and that's what we're going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our break for this evening. We'll see you all back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. When you come back tomorrow, just make your way to the courtroom directly